I never thought a single dress could tear my entire world apart, but looking back at the shattered remains of my social life, I realized that some people only love you when you stay exactly where they've put you. For 23 years, I was the girl in the oversized hoodies, the one with grease under her fingernails and hair that hadn't seen a professional stylist since middle school. But the moment I stepped out of that limo looking like a literal living doll, the masks didn't just slip, they fell off entirely. My own best friend looked at me with more hatred than I've ever seen in a stranger's eyes. And my boyfriend's reaction was the final nail in the coffin of a relationship I thought was forever. Was I wrong for finally wanting to feel beautiful, or were they just terrified that the ugly duckling they used as a shield had finally grown wings? I need you to listen to what happened and tell me if I was the villain for deceiving them, or if they were just toxic people who couldn't handle my glow-up. To understand how I got to that night, you have to understand who I was for my entire life. I grew up with 3 older brothers in a house where fashion meant choosing the flannel shirt that had the fewest stains. I was the classic tomboy, not because I hated being a girl, but because it was the only way I knew how to exist without being teased. My brothers, Jake, Leo, and Sam, were the kind of guys who thought skincare was just rinsing your face with a garden hose. If I ever showed interest in something feminine, like a pink ribbon or a sparkly clip, they'd call me a sissy or prissy. And eventually, I just stopped trying. I became the girl who could climb trees, fix a bike chain, and out-wrestle the neighborhood boys. My dad, a hard-working mechanic, was so proud of his 4th son. He taught me that beauty was a distraction, and that strength was the only thing that mattered. By the time I reached college, my identity was set in stone. I was the cool girl, the one who could hang out with the guys, watch the game, and never complain about getting dirty. My best friend, Sarah, loved this about me. Sarah was the polar opposite, blonde, polished, and always the center of attention. We had this unspoken dynamic where she was the pretty one, and I was the reliable sidekick. It worked for years because I didn't care about my looks, and Sarah felt secure being the undisputed star of our duo. I remember times when we'd go out to bars and guys would flock to her, while I was just the girl holding her purse and talking about football with the bored boyfriends. Sarah would always pat my hand and say, "I'm so glad you're not high maintenance like other girls. It makes you so much more approachable." At the time, I thought that was a compliment. I thought it meant I was grounded, but in reality, she was just happy I wasn't her competition. Then there was my boyfriend, Mark. We'd been together for 3 years, and he always told me he loved that I was low maintenance. He'd brag to his friends that his girlfriend took 5 minutes to get ready while their wives took 2 hours. He loved that he didn't have to worry about me wanting expensive jewelry or fancy dinners. We spent our weekends hiking, camping, or just sitting on the couch in our pajamas. I thought he loved me for my soul, but I would later realize he just loved that I wasn't a threat to his ego. He felt safe with me because he didn't think any other guy would look twice at me. I was his hidden gem. But the emphasis was heavily on the hidden part. He never encouraged me to try new things or dress up. Once, for our 2-year anniversary, I suggested we go to a nice steakhouse where there was a dress code. He actually laughed and said, "Babe, you'd be so uncomfortable in a dress, let's just grab burgers and wings." I felt a tiny pang of sadness then, but I pushed it down, telling myself I was lucky to have a guy who didn't care about superficial things. I didn't realize that Mark's attraction to me was built on my lack of options. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a possession that no one else would try to steal. He'd often make little comments about plastic girls or women who wore too much makeup, making it clear that if I ever tried to be one of them, I'd lose his respect. I was living in a cage made of flannel and low expectations. The real shift started about 6 months ago. I was passed over for a major promotion at my corporate job. I had worked harder than anyone else in the office, but the position went to a woman who had half my experience, but twice my professional presence. When I asked my boss for feedback, he sat me down and told me, off the record, that while my work was flawless, I didn't look the part for executive client meetings. He said, "Clients want to see someone who looks like they have their life together, someone with a certain polish." It stung. It stung in a way that woke something up inside me. I realized I had spent my whole life hiding behind baggy clothes and a one-of-the-guys persona, because I was afraid of failing at being feminine. I was using the Tomboy label as a shield against the fear of not being pretty enough. If I didn't try to be beautiful, then no one could tell me I had failed at it. But that conversation changed everything. I decided, quietly and without telling anyone, that I was going to change. I didn't want to just fix myself. I wanted to transform. I wanted to see what happened if I finally stopped hiding. I started a secret journey that felt like I was leading a double life. Every morning, I'd leave the house in my usual baggy jeans and oversized hoodie, but inside my gym bag were sleek leggings and high-performance gear. I joined a luxury gym 2 towns over, so I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I hired a personal trainer and told him I wanted the Barbie look, lean, toned, and graceful. The workouts were grueling. My body ached in places I didn't know existed, but as the weeks turned into months, I watched my posture straighten and my muscles define. But the physical fitness was just the beginning. I became a student of beauty. I spent hours every night on YouTube and TikTok, studying the science of skincare and the art of makeup. I learned about undertones, contouring, and color theory. I started a 10-step skincare routine that turned my dull, neglected skin into a glowing canvas. I went for laser hair removal, got my teeth professionally whitened, and started taking supplements for my hair and nails. I was spending my entire savings, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was investing in myself rather than just existing for others. The secrecy became a game. I'd buy high-end makeup and hide it in shoeboxes under the bed. I'd practice my walk in the middle of the night when Mark was fast asleep. I'd go to high-end boutiques during my lunch breaks, trying on dresses that cost more than my rent just to see how they felt against my skin. I felt like a spy in my own life. Keeping this from Mark was the hardest part. We lived together, so I had to be incredibly sneaky. I hid my expensive new skincare products in old, empty containers of generic moisturizer. I told him the glow on my face was just because I was drinking more water. When I started getting professional hair treatments to undo years of heat damage and neglect, I told him I was just staying late at the office for a boring project. I even started learning how to walk in 6-inch heels in the office basement. I was building a new version of myself in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to debut. I wanted it to be a surprise, a grand reveal that would make him fall in love with me all over again. I imagined him being stunned and proud, taking me in his arms and telling me I looked like a queen. I also wanted to show Sarah that I wasn't just her plain sidekick anymore. I wanted us to be a power duo, 2 beautiful women taking on the world together. I truly believed they would be happy for me. The perfect opportunity arrived in the form of Sarah's younger sister's high society engagement gala. This wasn't just a party, it was the social event of the year for their family. It was a black tie event held at a historic manor, the kind of night where everyone goes all out. Sarah had been planning her outfit for months. She had already picked out a stunning, shimmering silver gown that cost more than my first car, and spent weeks talking about how she was going to be the most beautiful person in the room. She even bought me a navy blue shapeless jumpsuit, saying, "I found this for you at a thrift store. It's very you, very comfortable so you don't have to worry about looking stiff or out of place." I thanked her and tucked it away in the back of my closet, knowing I would never wear it. Instead, I had secretly commissioned a custom gown. A floor-length hot pink, silk masterpiece with a sweetheart neckline and a slit that went up to my mid-thigh. It was a real-life Barbie dress. I had also saved up for a professional glam team, a hairstylist, a makeup artist and a nail tech, to come to a hotel room I'd rented for the afternoon. On the day of the gala, I told Mark I had to go into the office for a system emergency, and that I would meet him at the venue. He was annoyed, saying, "Why do you have to work on a Saturday? Now I have to go with Sarah and her parents alone." I kissed him on the cheek and promised I'd be there as soon as I could. As soon as he left, I bolted to the hotel. The next 4 hours were a blur of curling irons, makeup brushes, and silk. When the stylist finally turned the chair around, I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. My hair, which had always been a frizzy, tangled mess, was now a cascading waterfall of honey blonde waves with perfect volume. My skin was airbrushed to perfection. My eyes popped with subtle but dramatic lashes, and the pink dress fit me like a second skin. I looked expensive. I looked powerful. I looked like a literal doll come to life. I felt a surge of confidence I'd never known. I wasn't just a tomboy in a dress. I was a goddess. So that is the situation I found myself in. I had spent half a year lying by omission to the people I loved most, just to prove to myself that I could be more than the box they put me in. I was about to walk into a room and completely shatter their perception of who I was. I was terrified, but I was also excited. I thought this was the start of a new chapter, where I finally stepped into the light. Before I tell you about the absolute chaos that erupted the moment I stepped through those doors and the disgusting things Mark said to me in the aftermath, I want you to pause right now. Go to the comments and tell me. Am I the jerk for keeping this a secret and upstaging my best friend at her sister's event? Was it wrong of me to hide my progress just to have a big reveal? I really want to know what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have told them earlier? Or would you have wanted to see their faces too? The walk from the limo to the entrance of the manor felt like it was happening in slow motion. The valet actually stopped what he was doing and stared as I stepped out. I could hear the hushed whispers of other guests as I walked up the stone steps. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my silk bodice. I reached the double doors of the ballroom, took a deep breath and walked in. The room was packed with hundreds of people in tuxedos and gowns, but as I moved toward the center, a literal path seemed to open up. The music was playing, but to me, everything felt silent. I scanned the room and saw Sarah and Mark standing near the bar. Sarah was wearing her silver dress, laughing loudly and holding a champagne flute, clearly enjoying being the center of her social circle. I walked straight toward them. Mark's jaw literally dropped. He didn't even recognize me at first. He actually stepped back to let the beautiful stranger pass, his eyes scanning me up and down with blatant admiration. When I finally stopped right in front of them and said, "Hey guys, sorry I'm late, the work thing took longer than expected," the silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's face went through a terrifying transformation. It went from confusion to shock, and then to a deep, burning purple rage in about 3 seconds. She didn't say, "You look beautiful." She didn't hug me. She didn't even ask how I did it. She hissed, "What the hell are you wearing? You look like a circus act. You're supposed to be wearing the jumpsuit I got you. You look ridiculous, you're making a scene." I was stunned. I looked at Mark, expecting him to defend me, but he looked even worse. He wasn't just surprised. He looked humiliated and angry. He grabbed my arm, a bit too hard, and pulled me toward a quiet corner near the terrace. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice trembling with rage. "What are you doing? You look like a girl who's trying way too hard. This isn't you. Everyone is looking at you, and it's embarrassing for me. You look like a plastic doll, a fake. Why would you do this without telling me? Did you want to humiliate me?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "Humiliate you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Mark, I've worked for 6 months to look like this. I did it because I wanted to feel confident. I thought you'd be happy for me. I thought you'd think I was beautiful." He let out a harsh, cold laugh. "Beautiful? You look like someone I wouldn't even date. I liked you because you were real. This is shallow. This is desperate. You've become one of those girls I always mocked, and you did it behind my back. You've been lying to me for months. You were out there pretending to be someone else while I was sitting at home thinking we had a genuine connection." Before I could even respond, Sarah marched over, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. "You did this on purpose," she spat. "Today is my sister's night. I've been talking about my dress for weeks and you show up in this? You wanted to steal the attention because you're jealous that I'm the pretty one. You're a pathetic, backstabbing snake." I looked around and realized people were starting to stare, not at my beauty anymore, but at the scene we were making. The climax of the night happened when Sarah's sister, the actual bride-to-be, walked over to see what the commotion was about. Sarah immediately started crying fake tears, saying, "I'm so sorry, she's trying to ruin your engagement party by being a total narcissist." But her sister just looked at me, her eyes wide with genuine awe. She said, "Oh my God, is that you? You look incredible. You're literally the talk of the party. Everyone is asking who the Barbie girl is. You look like a movie star." That was the breaking point. Sarah screamed at her sister for taking my side, and then turned to me, calling me a fake, shallow B-word, in front of everyone nearby. Mark stood there, nodding in agreement with Sarah, telling me I should go home and change into something normal if I wanted to stay with him. He actually told me that if I didn't leave and take off the costume, we were finished. He gave me an ultimatum right there in the middle of the ballroom. Be the plain girl he could control, or be the beautiful woman who stood her ground and lose him forever. I didn't cry. I think I was too shocked to cry. I looked at Sarah, the woman I'd supported through every breakup and every crisis, and I realized she only liked me when I was her ugly shadow. She needed me to be the before picture so she could always be the after. And I looked at Mark, the man I thought was my partner, and realized he didn't love me. He loved the control he had over a version of me that didn't exist anymore. He was terrified that if I was beautiful, I'd realize I could do better than him. I looked them both in the eye and said, I spent 20 years being the person you wanted me to be. I spent 6 months becoming the person I wanted to be. I'm done living in the dark so you too can feel bright. I turned to Mark and said, we're over. You can find someone else to be low maintenance for you. Good luck finding a girl who wants to be invisible for your sake. Then I looked at Sarah and said, I hope you enjoy being the pretty one in an empty room, because I'm not playing your sidekick anymore. And by the way, your silver dress is basic. I turned around, my pink silk dress flowing behind me, and walked out of that manor with my head held high. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions and logistics. I didn't go back to the apartment I shared with Mark. I stayed in the hotel room and blocked both of them that night. Over the next few days, the fallout was intense. Sarah's family was split. Her sister actually sent me a bouquet of flowers and apologized for Sarah's behavior, saying she had never seen her sister so ugly on the inside. But Sarah herself started a smear campaign on social media. She posted old, unflattering photos of me from high school. Me covered in mud after a soccer game, me with braces and frizzy hair, and claimed I had lost my mind and spent my entire life savings on plastic surgery, which I didn't even get. She called me a chameleon and warned people not to trust me. Mark tried to call me a dozen times, alternating between begging for me to come back and accusing me of having an affair because no woman changes that much for herself. He told our mutual friends that I had become obsessed and superficial, and that he couldn't recognize the person I'd become. Our mutual friends were forced to pick sides. Most of the guys stayed with Mark, but several of the women reached out to me, confessing that they were inspired by what I did. They admitted they were also tired of being told to stay low maintenance and natural, just to make the men in their lives feel secure. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. I decided to fully lean into my new life. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I went to the office a week later, not in my hoodies but in a sharp, tailored power suit with my hair and makeup done to perfection. My boss didn't mention the gala, but he did mention my new energy. Within a month, I was lead on the biggest project in the company's history. And then I met someone new. Not a guy who wanted me to be small, but someone who saw the work I put into myself and admired it. He told me, I love that you know exactly who you are and that you're not afraid to show it. It was the first time I felt truly seen, not as a cool girl or a sidekick, but as a woman. I realized that by changing my outside, I had finally allowed my inside to match. I wasn't deceiving anyone. I was finally being honest. Mark and Sarah didn't lose me because I changed. They lost me because they couldn't love the version of me that didn't need them. In the months following the breakup, the ripple effect of my transformation reached further than I ever expected. My social media, once a graveyard of blurry nature photos and shots of my dog, became a platform for my journey. I started sharing the reality of my transition. Not just the glamorous photos, but the sweat at 5 a.m. in the gym, the frustration of learning to blend eyeshadow, and the painful process of shedding toxic relationships. I became an accidental influencer for women who felt stuck in the best friend or tomboy role. I realized that my story wasn't just about a dress. It was about the psychological warfare that happens when a person decides they are worth more than the crumbs they've been given. Every time I posted a photo in a bright color or a bold lip, I received hundreds of messages from girls saying, my boyfriend says I look better without makeup, but I feel so powerful with it. Is he right? I'd always tell them the same thing. If his love is conditional on your lack of confidence, it's not love, It's a hostage situation. The confrontation with my family was perhaps the most difficult part. When I finally went home for Thanksgiving, I didn't wear the flannel. I wore a sophisticated knit dress and heels. My brothers were silent for the first hour. Jake eventually muttered, "Who are you and what did you do with my sister?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm still the girl who can fix your car, Jake, but now I'm doing it while looking like $1,000,000. Get used to it." It took them seeing my paycheck from my new promotion and seeing me handle myself with grace under their teasing for them to realize that I hadn't lost my core. I had just added a very polished exterior. My dad was the hardest to crack. He looked at my manicured nails and sighed, "You can't work with those." I reached into his toolbox, grabbed a wrench, and tightened a loose bolt on his workbench without chipping a single nail. He gave me a small, rare smile and said, "All right then. Just don't forget where you came from." That was his version of a blessing. As for Sarah and Mark, their lives didn't exactly go upward after they cast me out. Without me there to make her look better by comparison, Sarah started picking fights with her other friends. She became known as the bitter one in her circle. She tried to replace me with another plain girl, but that girl saw through Sarah's narcissism within a month and quit the friendship. Mark, on the other hand, started dating a series of girls who were exactly what he claimed to hate: highly groomed, plastic, and very high maintenance. The irony was palpable. He didn't actually hate Barbies. He just hated that I became one without his permission. He wanted to be the one to provide the beauty, not have it be a result of my own hard work. Last I heard, he was still complaining about me to anyone who would listen. Stuck in a cycle of bitterness while I was out living the life I'd always dreamed of. I've learned that the people who tell you they love you, just the way you are, sometimes use that as a cage. True friends and true partners should want you to evolve, to grow, and to shine as brightly as you can. If your glow-up makes them uncomfortable, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because they're losing the advantage they had over you. I am no longer anyone's sidekick, and I'm no longer anyone's hidden secret. I am a real-life Barbie, not because of the dress, but because I took control of my own narrative and refused to let anyone else write the script. My transformation was a filter. It filtered out the small-minded, the insecure, and the controlling. What was left was a life full of color, confidence, and genuine connections. I am the woman I was always meant to be, and I didn't need anyone's permission to become her. Looking back, that hot pink dress was the most important thing I ever bought. It wasn't just fabric and silk. It was my declaration of independence. It was the signal that the old me was gone, and the new me was here to stay. To anyone listening who feels like they're stuck in a box, whether it's a tomboy box, a nerd box, or a plain box, don't be afraid to break out. The people who really belong in your life will be there to catch you when you do. If you think I did the right thing by standing my ground and embracing my transformation, please like this video. It helps me know I'm not alone in this journey. Subscribe for more stories about people finding their worth and standing up to those who try to hold them back. I want to hear your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Have you ever had a friend or a partner who hated seeing you succeed or change? Did you stay, or did you walk away like I did? Let's talk about it. I'll see you all in the next story.